Hi, it's Bill Gross with my weekly real estate market update. And is the homelessness really a problem, or is it just a business for the government to conduct its affairs and empower itself? Before I get into that, this is my weekly update I do every week on the real estate market. Let's take a look at the market stats to know where we are, and then we'll take a look at the news, including the homelessness. In any economy, you have two sides. You have the demand and supply. Demand in real estate is really pushed by interest rates, and supply is by inventory. Let's take a look first at interest rates. A lot of news last week. Rates jumped up on Friday. I was off Thursday and Friday for a holiday, but they jumped up about 0.5%. You'll notice we went from about 6.1 to 6.62% last week, and we're closing today at those highs, 6.62%. So about a 0.5% increase in the last week or two. Shocking, very little coverage in the news. For months, we had, will the Fed raise rates, lower rates, raise rates, lower rates? Everybody in the mortgage industry and the real estate news was watching what the Fed would do. But the reality in the market is when the jobs report came out on Friday and turned out to be maybe strong, 250,000 jobs instead of 150, or weak, too many jobs out of manufacturing and into other things that are inflationary, the inflationary pressures jumped up, but the news ignored it. I didn't ignore it. I put a special notice on that. But notice rates are 6.62%. What does that mean? Well, if you're an escrow and you didn't lock in your rate, you're going to pay a higher rate. If you're an escrow and you locked your rate, your lender's going to try to weasel out of it. If you're a seller and you have a buyer that's locked in, you want to help them get closed as soon as they can, because the lenders are going to try to weasel out of the lock-ins to make more profit on their deals. So this is a challenge, causing a lot of disruption in the market right now. So this is like all of a sudden we had a little downwind, and the markets, the rates were going with us as rates went down, and now it jumped back up 0.5%. These rates are the highest since summertime. So we've really reversed all the gains of the summer, and now we're back to 6.2 over. Now, does that mean we're going higher? Don't know that. Don't want to predict the future. I have a crystal ball. It's right behind my chair, but it doesn't really work. So I can't predict the future, but I can tell you right now, rates are higher. It's going to be a negative impact on buyer demand to some degree. It's going to move our market closer to a balanced market. Now, on inventory, not yet affected by the rates, because sellers with the higher rates might be more likely, less likely to sell if they have a good mortgage now, and also the house they might want to buy will cost them more. But up until last week, we had the inventory continuing to decline. We had been at about 649,000 units for sale back in a few weeks ago, and now we're at 625,000. So you see this trend line is down a little bit, whereas last year was still rising. And so we're kind of headed towards where last year was rising, we're declining a little bit. In the range of the pandemic years, what you'll notice though is it's still dramatically below any pre-pandemic years. So we still have, by historical standards, very few homes for sale. We only have 625,000 homes for sale in a market that will do about 4 million a year. And we are short about 3 or 4 million sales a year given our population. So the constricting factors, we just don't have enough houses. That may not cause housing prices to go up, but it certainly will mean the housing prices can't drop unless there's some major change in the economy or a major change in world news of some sort, or world war or something like that. Now, locally, the market has continued to soften. I use Altos Research, and they've dropped their overall market action report to 36, was 37 last week. And you can see it's been declining steadily for weeks. It was at 40.7 back in June. And what that means in this thermometer is we're more of a strong seller's market back in June, and we're inching closer to a buyer's market. Buyer's market would be probably 30 or less, and we're coming right up against that. We've certainly moved in that direction in the last few months. So overall, I would say the market is getting closer to normal. Now, remember, there's a time lag. Rates just jumped up last week, and that's going to ripple through, pulling some buyers out, pulling some sellers out. So you should, if this softened before rates changed, you should see it continue to soften a bit. We should be at 35 or 34 over the next couple of weeks based on the trend lines we have now. So again, the market is not crashing, but I would say is certainly returning for the first time post-pandemic to a normal market. Now, one of the stories that you might follow in real estate is homelessness. And one of the most sympathetic groups I think we all sympathize with are veterans. We give them a benefit that they're entitled to. My father bought a house on the GI Bill. As a veteran, he got a house with no money down and then sold the house and bought another one, and it helped him get his family started with wealth. And the problem is that's becoming less and less affordable to our veterans. But more importantly, our government doesn't even really care about it. The joke is that we have more and more government programs and money spent than ever before, being less and less effective. And what's come out recently is they really don't care. And you would say, well, Bill, that sounds callous. I'm going to show you what I mean. Take a look at this. Is Stars and Stripes online, which is historically very sympathetic with service members. Outreach efforts in LA is connecting some homeless vets with services isn't enough. And it chronicles about a third of all homelessness of veterans is in California. And half of that's in Los Angeles. And they talk about how important it is to find housing for them, not temporary, but long-term housing, and how they should be close to service centers. Because what you don't want to do, say, is put the veterans in Lancaster and then have them need to go to the LA Veterans Hospital for their medical services, particularly veterans who have injuries as a result of their service. We owe them the service that goes along with solving the problems they have. And so, a very sympathetic article. The funny part is, I guess it's not funny if you're a service member suffering homelessness, is that we actually have land right by a hospital. It's not being used. Now, here's CalVet. This is our state government, and they're going to list all the programs and all the things they do to help service members. Let me pull this up real quick. We have outreach and support services. We have a call center. We have healthcare, continuum care. We have stand downs. We have this, we have that. All kinds of employees and benefits and programs and money being spent to help veterans. You might think, wow, where in the world would they find places to put these people? I'm laughing because it's funny how pathetic these people are. It's really sad that this really affects people's lives, because on one hand, we make it look like we're doing so much, because it turns out, I covered this story in the last couple of weeks. UCLA has been, and other businesses, has been using land designated for veterans for years for their baseball stadium. And they lost a federal lawsuit a couple weeks ago. And the reason why it became in the news is only because they've been fighting this for 12 years. They lost appeal, which means they lost the court case and then appealed it and lost the appeal. And then they only got shut out because why? The Veterans Administration has its own police force, put up a fence, and literally locked UCLA Baseball out of the veterans facility. In fact, you can see here the UCLA Baseball sign in the background. You can see the VA hospital. And so what you have is finally the Veterans Administration standing up for veterans, which is what that land was designed for. In fact, the land was donated. There's an amazing story of a very generous lady in 1887 who donated this huge swath of land in West LA, amongst the most viable lots in all of Los Angeles, called the West Los Angeles Veterans Affairs Medical Center and West Los Angeles VA Soldiers Home. The piece of property that's just being in question is 400 acres. That doesn't count the land being used by the hospital and housing now. The extra land being misused by UCLA and other businesses is 400 acres of the most valuable property in all of Los Angeles. How valuable is the property? Well, I just recently went on to, here's an overview of it. You can see the, let's see here, UCLA's Jackie Robinson Stadium. So this is if you know Wilshire Boulevard, and here is the VA Center, and here's housing that's really undeveloped. Should be more housing built there, but they've done a very bad job. They have parking lot space rather than towers. So this is all being kind of wasted and misused. This is the VA cemetery, driven by the National Cemetery, which is important to have. But right near there is this property, this whole lot that's being used by UCLA for the baseball stadium and some oil company and some public school system for their facility. I think Fox Studios stores at least some of it to store stage materials there. And you can see this is virtually a walking distance to Wilshire Boulevard to the Veterans Hospital. So what better place could you have to put housing than right here, right? And so UCLA has been renting this space instead of veterans. Now you might say, well, and let's take a look at how valuable this land is. I went into Redfin and pulled up, and Here's condos that sell for between $800,000 and $1.5 million. Here's Wilshire Boulevard, just to give you some perspective, Wilshire. And this is the land we're talking about right in here. So this is very valuable real estate that people love to live here because there's great restaurants and stores and the VA hospital and UCLA, big employer, all kinds of hospitals and such. This is some of the best, most valuable land in all of Los Angeles. So the hardship UCLA faced last week was their baseball team, instead of playing at this world-class facility, had to practice at Birmingham High School. And so here you see the players, they're doing their stretches. Looks to me like they're doing okay. I don't know. Looks like a nice piece of grass. Looks like a lot of fun playing I know when I played baseball, our field wasn't that good in Little League. That's a high school field. Birmingham's is a high quality high school. So I don't know, it doesn't look to me like too much pain, but here's what homeless people go through. Just to give you a comparison, instead of the high school kids stretching on grass, this is, in case you forget what tents look like, and we have them all over our city. But why not, instead of having these tents on Robertson Boulevard and Pico Boulevard and La Cienega Boulevard and under freeways, why not put them on the field where the baseball field is? Wouldn't that be a nice place to live if you had to while you're building them housing? Why not develop housing on the space? Why not, if you can't do it, sell the space to a developer who can build housing for us? And the reality is they just don't really care. At the end of the day, for all the Veterans Administration and all the CalVet employees and all the committees and administrations and money spent, they really don't care. They would much rather have a UCLA baseball team on a beautiful grass field while allowing U.S. veterans who are homeless to squat on boulevards in Los Angeles under freeway underpasses next to illegal immigrants and crime and drugs and prostitution. That's how the VA and the CalVet really think about veterans. That's how our government really treats people. It's just a business for them to get employed. And when government officials run for election and tell you they're going to take care of the veterans, they won't even allow the veterans to squat on a green grass baseball field. They rather them squat under a free underpass to allow a baseball team. And remember, UCLA is a California institution. The state government owns UCLA. So all the government, the CalVet would say, hey, you know what? Instead of baseball, let's put people who need to live there, need medical care in walking distance, let's put them there instead. They won't do it. That's why the whole thing is just a big joke. We're being played for stupid. Now, another way we were played for stupid is on the whole squatter issue, because what you always notice is that the government is always passing new laws and regulations to protect the squatter, not the evil landlord. It's always important in all of the propaganda to make landlords look evil. Now, my experience, I would say 10 to 1, I get phone calls from landlords who are being cheated by out of their property, and often very modest. I've had landlords who literally run food stamps, who are literally in government nursing facilities because the property they owned was taken over by a squatter. Had they sold the property, they could have had decent housing and decent medical care and more normal food. But instead, the squatter took the land, the property that was theirs. Here's a recent horrific example, and I'm surprised the LA Times, which has been a propaganda machine, even reported this. Here's a case in Encino where this guy, he got arrested for allegedly stealing an Encino home from a man, and the man later killed himself. This squatter came into this house, it was worth about $1 million, and he ran some sort of criminal enterprise out of it, drugs and such. And here's the victim. Now, I'm not sure you can tell by the picture which is which, but this is the victim. In 2018, the squatter moved in. In 2022, this man, Robert Taskin, gave up and killed himself. Can you imagine owning a property, and it turns out he moved to Texas because it was cheaper and was living basically homeless himself and had mental problems. Of course, the stress of this would drive anybody crazy, literally. And 4 years later, he kills himself in despair, rather than living in a beautiful home in Encino. And, probably paying taxes and insurance and supporting local businesses. Instead, this deadbeat is protected by our government. He has to get notices, and the forms have been improved over and over again to protect this man, the squatter, protected. We have legal protections. We now not only do we have now legal nonprofits supporting this man, we now have the government, city of Los Angeles and county, government officials hired to protect this man who stole the property that led to this man's, and of course he was mentally ill to commit suicide by definition, to him committing suicide. So again, I want to put a face on it because I just feel like we do such a bad job, and the press and our politicians have done such a bad job of making landlords look evil and tenants look good. Here's another example. And look, there's a lot of great attorneys, but there's a lot of bad ones. And I think the concern is, having read the American Bar Association Journal as an affiliate member for the last few years, the population of attorneys is really becoming foot soldiers of government power and propaganda. And if you read the movements from the inside, you'll notice that it is becoming almost unanimous, certainly in Los Angeles and California and in the national bar, on focusing on social justice, which means landlords evil, tenants good. Here's another example. The Los Angeles County Bar Association has a program. I was just shocked to see this. Help fight evictions with tenant power toolkit. Now, the thing that struck me about this was it doesn't say help fight wrongful evictions. It doesn't help fight unfair evictions. It doesn't say help fight unnecessary evictions. It is, and this is a business, fighting all evictions. Basically, this is a population of attorneys in Los Angeles who are social justice warriors, which means every eviction to them is wrong because they believe all property belongs to the people. You say, well, Bill, you're exaggerating. Well, let's take a look. This is the LA County Bar Association. The speaker is, and this is from the Council of Justice. Sounds good, doesn't it? Renee Christian Moya of the Debt Collective. He's one of the speakers, right? So let's take a look at, well, what is the Debt Collective? And if you go there, they're right in front. Guided by core values, been honed since they started. And what they want to say is, let me see, where am I here? The market won't save us. Market-based solutions cannot solve the problems that markets create in the first place. This is basically saying we're communist. We don't believe in the free market system. We need just to take the property. And when you go a little further, democratize everything through collaboration. And I'm trying to think where else I read this before. Oh yeah, what is the Debt Collective? The economic system forces us into debt, student debt for education, mortgages, uncertain debt for housing, unpaid bills for utilities, phone. Basically, no one should have to go into debt to meet basic needs. What they're basically doing is trying to attack all debt. So we as taxpayers are going to just forgive all student loans. We're going to forgive utility loans. We're going to forgive, certain mortgage debts, I guess, at some point. These debts are illegitimate, and the system needs to change. So this is who the LA County Bar Association is promoting on their website as a way to fight, evictions. And when people say they want to fight evictions, they're not saying they want to fight unfair or wrongful evictions. They literally want the property to be transferred to the tenant. And that's what's going on. And if you don't see behind the curtain, it's just because you're not looking, you're not willing to pay attention to it. Okay, elsewhere in the news, this was an interesting graph. One of the terms you might hear if you follow business news is the inverted yield curve. Now, what does that mean? Normally, when you put money, let's say in a bank on a CD, you have one rate for, say, a 3-month CD, maybe 2%, and then a higher rate for, say, a 5-year or 10-year, maybe 4% or 5%. Because the longer you're willing to forgo your money, the higher your return should be, given uncertainty. When those numbers are inverted, when you get a higher rate for short-term than long-term, that's called an inverted yield curve. And what's interesting is this particular graph I saw showed not only that how long it's been inverted, but what it means. Meaning, in the past, whenever we had inverted yield curves, they were immediately followed by recessions or worse. The longest we'd had an inverted yield curve was back in 1980. And I remember I graduated college, though, we had a major recession. We now have the inverted yield curve for 25 months. So this tells us that there'll be a change in the economy one way or the other, probably not good. Certainly it's volatile. And the way I think of this is, it's like a rubber band being stretched. Now, it can be stretched and be let go, be used for power, or it can be stretched too far and break. And that demonstrates, I think, pretty accurately, if you look at how big that number is, I think it shows us how stretched our economy is and why we should be very careful about what we think about it. Also in the news, I found this fun. I found this hysterical. This is on Inman. Inman is the largest independent real estate news source. I don't understand how that happens. Zillow Data says showcase agents. Now, the word showcase agents should have quote marks or a registered trademark, because showcase agents is Zillow's, and they don't want to do that here because they don't want to clue you in, is Zillow's product. And you notice it's a sponsored post. This is a trick by the news organizations now. You don't notice it. They purposely use a color that you're going to ignore to match these other colors, right? Zillow Data shows showcase agents win 20% more listings than similar non-showcase agents. So this is what news organizations do. They write up articles that look like news. They use every trick to make you think it's news, but it's not news. Another way to rephrase this is Zillow says its product works. It is Zillow Data. And here's the thing you have to know about Zillow. If Zillow ran data every month for 12 months, and if 6 months showed they got more listings, and if 6 months showed of the 12, they got less listings, then every month of the 6 that showed more listings, they would publicize that. And the 6 months that showed it didn't work, they wouldn't publicize that. And they get a free ad every other month saying their data shows their product works. But this is what passes for news now in our economy, is a little teeny sponsored ad, and they pick the color to match so that your mind just doesn't see what goes on. Also in the news of false information, this one is fascinating. One of my favorite authors is Mike DelPret. He's a professor of real estate somewhere in Colorado, and he has a newsletter and he has a website. He shows how misleading these venture capital companies are when they talk about their finances. So a recent one I'd heard about a couple years ago was Picasso. Picasso was one of those disruptors who was seeking to disrupt the second home industry by creating online kind of agency to eliminate the realtor. Everything online is eliminate the realtor, which is another way of saying we want to eliminate real human beings, we want to destroy human beings, and we want to destroy people who pay taxes and replace them with monopolies that pay less taxes by bribing government officials. So here's Picasso, and they're raising money by saying we have a strong business momentum, and here's a chart showing their sales appearing to go up. Wow, look at that, $278 million all up to $956 million. About $1 billion they put, it's just under. They couldn't wait to get to $1 billion. And their profit's about $100 million. They went from $29 million, it looks like, up to $95 million. Well, that's not correct. What this really is a cumulative number. What does that mean? Well, it's not they did $278 million in 2021 and $793 in 2022 and $956 in 2023. It means they did $278 in 21, and then they did another $793 in 2022. You add those together, and cumulatively, they got to $956. In fact, those numbers aren't the right ones. These are the right ones. They did $277, then they did $705, then they did $208. You add those three numbers together, it's about $1 billion. But wait, what do you notice? Well, from 2022 to 2023, it dropped. It dropped by over 50%. They're down 60, 70% in sales. And not surprising, the profits, which they said were about $100 million, well, they were cumulatively, but they went from 29 million up to 53, down to 12. Their profits are less than half what they were 2 years ago. And while their sales increased, their profits went down. So this is basically a company that's really struggling. I mean, any other business whose volume is down from 2 years ago and their profits are less than half 2 years ago, you call them a failing company. Yet, this is the graph they're allowed to show potential investors to disrupt the evil realtors who are charging commissions. Gosh, you gotta hate these venture capital companies. And these are Silicon Valley bros who are investing in tech company because they want a second home. Now think about this. All you hear about is how the American dream is under pressure. People can't afford to buy their first home. And here you have Silicon Valley creating a disruptive technology with some investment of venture capital, which isn't going to pay any federal taxes, wiping out people who do, to turn what might be a nice sleepy town in some resort area into a second home paradise for Silicon Valley tech bros. Really, this is why you should hate these companies like Google and Facebook and the people aspire to be the next one. They just over and over again use their monopolistic power to destroy the principles that have made our country great. So, am I too harsh? I don't mean to be negative, because here's the truth. The truth is, I'm working hard. My business is good. I have customers who are doing well. But don't get caught up in the headlines. The government is not going to help us. The government's not going to help solve the homeless problem. They're going to shuffle them around. And the government is not going to help the affordability problem. We need to make more money. We need to save more money, cut our expenses to achieve those dreams. And I'm here to help. If I can help you, reach out. I'm at Bill Gross Probate on social media. BillGrossProbate.com is my website. Comment, like, subscribe. If I can help in any way, reach out. And as always, make today your best day ever. Thanks so much.